Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Mairead O'Reilly, your educational technologist. I'm delighted to welcome back Joe Houghton and Paul Cuffe to follow up on our previous two AI seminars, which were also delivered under the umbrella of our blended learning community of practice. After Joe's and Paul's talks, we invite you to please ask questions or share your concerns or experiences, because everything is valuable at this point and no question is too stupid. The session will be recorded and will be shared afterwards. So now we're going to start off with Paul, and then Paul will introduce Joe to you. So thank
Super.
you.
Thanks, Mairead. So great to see people on this morning. What I'm going to be talking about is this hackathon, using the term loosely, right? But this student competition that we ran last week, we kicked it off last Monday. Gave the brief to the students and they formed teams and they came back with their answers, their case studies on the Thursday pitch competition. And as I'll now describe, we kind of gave them this brief as saying, look, what are we to do? How exposed is continual assessment in the College of Engineering and Architecture? And what might we do about that? They were the two basic questions we were asking. So this competition was run under the aegis of the Satle Project that I'm doing with John Healy, Kevin Nolan, and Emer Doheny. We put into the budget for that project, a fairly substantial prize fund to allow us to run a competition of this sort. So we teamed up with Alexoc. We thought that was important, that they're quite a vibrant student society, quite busy, do lots of stuff, lots of bright students, interested in technology and programming and all of that sort of stuff that's quite relevant. So we teamed up with Alexoc to run the event. And these are some of the silly little slides, if you like, that I presented at the kickoff of the event to say, look, we all know what the problem is. If ChatGPT can just allow anyone to fake assessments to sort of steal grades that they don't deserve, right? The reason we assess students is to figure out who deserves an engineering degree, to go out into the world and be trusted to manage infrastructure or whatever else. But it's a silly image I'm kind of throwing up as well, just to point out that ChatGPT can now make images, or rather it interfaces with DALL-E 3, which is another similar large language model, now fully integrated into the paid tier of ChatGPT. Great fun to play around with. You throw in prompts like this and you get back images. This is the other sort of silly thing. I wanted to make a sort of cautionary comic book tale. Learning is for losers. Look at our cat here. He's going to let ChatGPT do everything. So he cheats on all his assignments, steals his engineering degree, and then, oh no, he's in the real world and engineering's hard. And then, the bridge he made collapses. So we don't want this, do we? Look, it's silly, right? Of course it's silly, but also it's not silly. Like, the credibility of the UCD brand, like to some large degree, depends on the fact that we reliably produce good graduates, that employers who come and hire our graduates go, wow, these are great engineers. And it will take a while to lose that brand value. Reputations die slowly, but reputations absolutely can die. So there really is a reason to think about these things. Okay, so that was the purpose of the competition. I think we went into it quite open-minded, like I say, on this Satle project. We've been working over the summer. We had 2 research assistants. I presented on this last time, essentially given our opinion of how exposed modules are. We'd certainly informally, tossed around a few proposals for what someone might do about it. But we were very open-minded to say, look, some bright students that are right there in the coalface, they're doing the assessments in the college. They're aware of what makes them hard or what makes them easy and how they could be gamed. So absolutely, this was a genuine competition. We really were soliciting insights. The way I presented them, this is what we did on the Monday night. They came, most of them came already in teams. I pitched them, I explained to them, here's what we're looking for, which I'll repeat now. And really, I was going away on the Monday night saying, look, that's a great, vibrant, smart, creative group of young students, and I was looking forward to seeing what they come back with on the Thursday. So this was the brief they were given, right? This was the written brief they were given. I wrote this. As you can see, there are decent prizes, $3,000 for the first top team. So there's a real incentive for teams to engage with this, right? It's not a trivial exercise. And so there it is. Competition is soliciting creative new ways to integrate tools like ChatGPT into the College of Engineering and Architecture. But I did put this to them, and this thing that I really don't think should be kind of softened, or we should use euphemisms. The urgent, pressing problem, the right now thing that is dropped, is that the integrity and legitimacy of continuous assessment components is now imperiled, or certainly that's my opinion. And so I was giving, these teams were given this brief to say, like, this certainly is on the face of it, this appears to be the case, that there is an urgent problem, and ideally to surface, to articulate that problem and to point towards tangible actions that the college should take. Okay, so I was really afraid, like, when you tell people it's a hackathon and they're going to be pitching, my fear is always you just get kind of buzzwords and kind of vague stuff and abstractions and just, useless kind of stuff. So I was really trying to steer teams towards, no, like, take an opinion on things, get the finger out, say something, be definitive, deft, creative interventions. Okay, so there's a bit of pitch deck, and they sent in a few pages of documentation on top of that. I was looking for defined specific shortcomings, again, so not in general, not an abstract assessment of AI and education. I was kind of looking for this module code, this program, very specific, concrete things, and to boldly illustrate how we can patch up those assessments. What would a future-proofed assignment look like? So, of course, like, I'm repeating myself here. Creative, provocative, get the finger out, take an opinion, tangible, actionable, state your position boldly and clearly, right? So I was really trying to steer teams towards saying, let's have a proper discussion about this. We're engineers, nothing wrong with a bit of technical flair and vision. At a minimum, prevent this AI-enabled cheating. Let's call a spade, that's what it is. If ChatGPT does your homework for you, you are cheating, you are stealing a degree that you do not deserve. And we need to prevent that. So that's the immediate bare minimum response that the university needs to make. But wouldn't it be lovely if not only could we do that, but also we enhance learning and give everyone a better time. So there it is. Okay, that was the brief I gave to them. Just as an aside, I think Joe will be talking about this a bit as well, but just for the state of play as I see it, ChatGPT will be the main large language model that I'm using. Like most people, it's the market leader at the moment. If you're on the paid tier, and I would really recommend to any colleagues that are on a faculty salary, it's I think €13 a month. Like, unbelievably worth it. Like, I cannot describe how unbelievably worth it is. It's like having a research assistant sitting there, and it only costs you €13 a month. So on that paid tier, what you get now is you're on GPT-4. On the free tier, you get 3.5. So just the basic ability of the model to comprehend what you're asking for, to write good text, is just better. And then, so since in the last 6 months, they've been gradually adding more and more features. And these are not trivial things, right? These aren't little, the user interface is a bit nicer. Each of these features is significant technological development. One big one is you can set custom instructions. That one sounds it doesn't sound as powerful as it is, but basically those are the standing orders that you can give ChatGPT. You can tell it, I'm an engineering student, or I'm an assistant professor of engineering at UCD. You can tell it, I would like you to respond in a terse style. Don't be too wordy. You can tell it what type of assistance you want. Obviously, its main party trick is you type in a text prompt and you get a text output. When I say text output, that could be code, it could be markup, it could be equations. It can now also do image output. So the various images I've been displaying, that's easy peasy. You just select the image mode. You can say, hey, I'm looking for this. You can kind of brainstorm with it. So it's not even like something like Mid-Journey, you just type your text prompt and you get back your images. This is a kind of slightly different vibe in that like DALL-E is what's actually generating the images, and you're chatting to ChatGPT and it's kind of brainstorming prompts that go to DALL-E. You get the images back. It kind of asks you, did you like that? So it's very sort of interactive. Lots of fun and very powerful. It can take now an image as an input. This was rolled out in the last like 3 weeks or so. So you can take a picture of something and have a conversation about it. Again, it's extremely smart and powerful. So that picture could be a piece of equipment in a lab. It could be a photograph of a lab handout. It could be a graph. It could be a curve. And you can have a conversation about that picture. A feature which I haven't got yet, but is being rolled out, is conversation mode. It's kind of text in, text out, but you speak in.
I'll show you that later.
You got it, have you? Okay, you're one of the lucky ones. And again, it sounds trivial, but look, as I'm sure Joe will say, people say that can really change your workflow. You know, it's a different vibe chatting to an AI tool. Then, of course, these other ones, code execution. So it can write code and run it itself. You don't even need to spin up your own Python instance. It just does that. You can upload CSV files. It has an ability to browse the internet. It has a plugin ecosystem to link in with lots of other tools. So, you know, each of these bullet points is, you know, very significant upgrades over where we were a year ago. And where we were a year ago, it was already a very powerful tool. Okay, so that's my read on the state of play. But like I say, Joe will have lots more. Here's the custom instructions. So I just typed in, you know, we could pretend I could tell ChatGPT that I'm always a student of electrical engineering, so always respond accordingly. How would I like ChatGPT to respond? You could sculpt something in there, you know, to get it talking like, you know, a very good student, you know, in that same style that you can copy paste straight into your lab report or whatever you want, right? So again, from the point of view of cheating, something like custom instructions is very, very powerful. Okay, so that was the competition. That was the brief, the remit we gave to these teams in the competition. That's, you know, what they're up against. So that's the state of play of these tools. 7 of those teams, 2, 3, or 4 students on each team, came back and pitched their case studies, you know, their identification of a problem and a proposed solution to that problem. Great teams, great energy, very vibrant. But look, no, right? There isn't an easy solution, right? There was no slide presented on the night where you could say, oh, that's it, right? Like that's what the college needs to do. So like I'll show you some of the slides, and I'm not denigrating them or criticizing them. I'm just saying, like, to me, it points up the scale of the challenge here, right? So I just want to put this across to any colleagues that haven't played at this. Like, ChatGPT right now is a very capable generalist, okay? So any sort of continual assessment task that you might ask a student to do, it can also do, right? It's not like it has this Achilles heel, you know, that there's some kind of gap that only humans can do a certain thing. You know, in the AI space, they used to always talk about, you know, the Turing test, you know, that you would have a kind of conversation and you wouldn't be able to tell whether it's a human or a computer inside in the box. People have sort of suddenly stopped talking about that, I think basically because ChatGPT passes it, like, with flying colors, okay? So, you know, imagine every student in your class had a personal paid assistant that followed them around, and that paid assistant had a degree in electrical engineering and a degree in economics and a degree in English literature, and it could do any task given to it rapidly, and with a certain amount of flair and aplomb. Okay, so that should be our default position on how we think about this. There isn't a special way you can structure an assignment that will kind of reveal the Achilles heel of ChatGPT. It doesn't have an Achilles heel. So for me, what I think that means is, you know, it comes back to assessments that are direct assessments of a physical human being in front of you. Okay, so when we have RDS exams, the students go to the RDS and they bring their student cards and they put them on the desk next to them, and somebody checks that they are a physical human being that matches the description on the student card. So those assessments are still robust. Similarly, like lab types of assessments, where students have to show up in a lab and do certain things, there's some degree of exposure there, but basically anything that's happening out of your sight, it is probably being done by ChatGPT. Okay, so that's my rather cynical take on this. So yeah, there it is, right? I shared my opinions on LinkedIn as well. It's no secret. What do I say there? Tools like GPT-4 are wickedly powerful. Most anything you could ask a student to do, they can do also. Okay, if we want to retain continued assessment, there's no obvious solution. Look, that's only a share price for one company. You can't read the tea leaves too much, but Chegg was a huge successful essay mill, very lucrative company that students would pay to help them fraudulently get qualifications that they don't deserve. And you can see, it's completely collapsed. What's the share price there? Is like 8, where it had been at 30. It's hard not to interpret this as showing the power of ChatGPT. Okay, so let's rephrase. That means ChatGPT is like a really good, really cheap essay mill. That really is what it is, right? So I mean,
Sorry, that's me.
Oh yeah, there we go. So something that comes to mind for me is, look, maybe I'm too young. I wasn't around for the debates of when the university started to pivot more towards continual assessment. My perception is that was kind of around 15, 20 years ago, when things like semesterization and modularization were brought in. My perception, which could be wrong, is that pivot kind of came with the sense that a modern university should move away from these rigid end of year exams. My guess or my understanding is at the time there was debates about that, and that people said things like, well, if you set an essay at home, people can cheat. And that's correct. And students have been using Chegg to cheat. So this, the skepticism of continual assessment was probably always somewhat justified. Those problems were never fully resolved. And now that just explodes again, right? Because cheating is now cheaper and easier. So presumably more people will do it. So okay, so here's just some of the slides that we had. And like I say, great slide decks, great teams, full of energy, right? So no criticism of the students. So like this team here, DXJ, David and Jesse, they took, a fairly involved signal processing lab. You can see it there. Plot a continuous signal in the time domain in MATLAB. That's pretty easy. Derive the continuous time Fourier transform of the continuous signal, right? So these are pretty involved technical questions, right? Each of those bullet points is not an easy or a trivial task. And their conclusion was that even a very granular, specific, relatively demanding technical task that is completely AI vulnerable. So you can see here, David is a very quick video. I wish it was almost a bit slower. But he recorded himself doing that whole task, that whole, fairly involved homework assignment. Just him and ChatGPT banging it out. And like he was saying on the night, like, yeah, it can do everything. The thumb isn't on the scale there. That's how these tools can be used. So what the guys came up with, and again, I'm not trying to criticize them, but like, a lot of the teams in the night were sort of saying this sort of stuff of like, oh, so instead of just assessing, people's ability to write code, you have to assess their understanding. But, so proposals are things like, oh, it could be like a learning journal or it's a group project. I still think that like, ChatGPT can write a learning journal. Like ChatGPT can pretend to be a group project. It doesn't actually solve the problem. I mean, some of the better proposals are things like, you might give a homework assignment and then there'll be an oral examination, where you'd haul in a subset of students and ask them, why did you do this? Why did you do that? That gets you some of the way there, I think. But So again, here was another team with the great name of ChatGPA, which I thought was pretty funny. So 4 students on this team. This is a mechanical lab, material science, something like that. And it's this sort of, lab with homework dimensions. You're making measurements and making certain inferences. And again, like David did there, they kind of basically solved that lab with ChatGPT, let ChatGPT do the lab. That was their experiment. They went to the module TA and asked, the person who would normally be grading those lab reports, they kind of went to them and said, look, this isn't a real submission, but pretend it is and grade it. There it is, 85 points. They don't say anything. I'm not able to distinguish between the work done by AI and the work done by humans. Okay, so we all kind of knew that, but I like that this team rubbed our nose in it or just made it absolutely clear, right? Module coordinator. I don't know if Mert is on the call actually. But there you go. When you show these things to module coordinators, it's a shock. And I think any of our modules, like, it's not to attack that module or that coordinator, but if this team had picked any of our modules, I think it would be, a similar kind of story. Again, they're kind of proposing stuff like this, where after submission of a lab report, and like I say, at least with a lab report, students do have to physically show up and physically use their hands. So they have to do something. But the idea of like a defense of a lab report, when we're assessing dissertations or PhD theses, there's this idea of a defense. So like that's a long established practice in higher education. Maybe that needs to be rolled out for much more granular stuff. That, like I say, that is a partial solution. Here's another team, piece of cake. I thought it was interesting here. Here was all their dismissed ideas. So this is all the stuff they brainstormed that they thought wouldn't work. And again, it's not even so much to comment on the bullet points here, but it was more like our experience on the project over the summer, just informal chats and stuff where you kind of kick around ideas for responding to this. You end up dismissing a lot of them. You kind of go, oh, that sort of might kind of work, but not really. Like AI text detection, that's not sustainable. You could ban access to ChatGPT on the university network. You can fiddle around with this sort of stuff. Are we dismissing that idea of a fully in-person assessment style? Maybe there was a sense that final exams were unfashionable, but maybe we do just need to rethink that. So look, there you go. That was like great experience, fun hackathon, great students. But I'm afraid there's no slam dunk great solution here. So I can take some questions now, or we can bounce straight over to Joe.
I have lots of questions, and I've also got my camera working again. There's one of those plug it out, plug it back in again jobs. Did you have any difficulty recruiting the student groups? Was there any hesitancy? Did you get as many as you thought you might?
Well, look, if I'm being honest, and I mean, anyone who's run a competition like this, you're afraid on two sides, because you've committed in your funding to run a competition of this sort, which seemed like a great idea when we were writing the proposal. And then you go, wait, how are we going to do this? And my fear would either be that, we'd have way too many teams or way too few. So look, that we were kind of lucky, or we structured it the right way. I sent out, I used the targeted communication system, I think, to every undergraduate in the college, or, I cast a fairly wide net saying the event was happening. Alexoc's a great society. They do a lot, very busy. And, they have their own, if you like, network or pipeline of members. So like, we're talking to Daniel, who's their head. I was going to say, look, how many people can we expect to show up, and how will we structure this? We gave them some sandwiches at the kickoff event. That helps boost numbers. So I think maybe it was like 9 or 10 teams sort of said they'd enter, but then it was only 7 got it in by the deadline, So, okay. And look, it was like week 6, which is probably the busiest week in the whole trimester for assessments. So if had it been a different week, maybe there would have been better engagement. But I think I was happy enough with the number of students we had. Like, I don't think I watched the 7 pitches, and I wasn't there saying if we had another 10 pitches, we'd learn a whole lot more. It sort of felt like
yeah.
The vibe,
but also sounds like a manageable amount. 7 seems fairly. Like, you're not going to get bored listening to 7 different pitches. It sounds like a good number. And did you? So maybe you said this and I just didn't catch it. Did you run the entire event in 1 week? Or was it spread out? Yeah,
so the kickoff was on Monday, and it was kind of, we booked the room for the whole evening. It was open 3, 2, 1. So it's like, come, you might already have a team or you might not. I gave those few slides, and it was kind of like, okay, get the laptops out and sort of start working, and then sort of come back on Thursday. So the idea of being a fairly kind of focused sprint. Now, you could argue if that's the right structure or not, but I felt it meant teams could come and kind of get something done, and that's it then,
And did they have much advance notice that this was the week? Like, there'll be some student who's away on a skiing trip. There'll be somebody else doing, like, in terms of when did you start the marketing? Maybe
I think it was about 10 days ahead or something. So maybe again, it could have been earlier, but like talking with Daniel, he's kind of like, look, if you run an event on a Monday night, you're going to get this many people. The marketing maybe doesn't affect it that much. So
yeah. Cool. I probably have loads more questions, but I'll stop and give someone else a go.
Alice?
Thanks so much for that, Paul. It was really interesting and worrying at the same time. I was wondering, and I've asked you this by email, but have you tried this out on any forms of continuous assessment in the college, like that come from the design disciplines, from architecture, landscape architecture? Because we assess those, they are continuous assessment, but they're portfolio based and they're design based, and the student regularly meets staff to talk about their work. So I was wondering about that, and if we need to, if it would be interesting to have a kind of similar type hackathon in APEP, just to kind of test it out and to see what the possibilities are.
Yeah, and especially, Alice, like it's a great point, right? And especially now that the image stuff is in play, that images can come in and images can come out. That obviously has implications for design tasks. I mean, I'd say that maybe APEP is well ahead of the curve, with fairly well developed practices around, studio modules. What do they call it? The crit. That's the big thing that the students freak out about.
Review. We call it review now.
Okay, but like, look, here's me saying, oh, we should really bring back defenses of more granular stuff, and it seems that in architecture as a discipline, that's really, really firmly embedded, which maybe does insulate a bit from this stuff. And again, that it's a, as I understand it, I could be wrong, but students showing up in studios, being physically present for a number of hours and talking to people, and that's all really, really good stuff. And maybe over here we haven't had as much of that. But look, Alice, I totally think what we've covered here and the students we had, like I said, I think I sent email to everyone in the college, but most of the students were from School of Electrical, Electronic and Mechanical. They're the ones who showed up, and a few oddballs from all around the university, but that was the core of it. So it meant that everyone was looking at kind of our types of labs, which I totally accept is very different to how things are assessed in APEP. And I think it'd be really interesting to kind of figure out how all that works over there.
But it's interesting if your conclusions are. Am I right in understanding that one of your conclusions are that it's more effective to meet the students in person? Like if they're working on something that's continuous, to meet the students in person and to understand the work that they're doing, to talk to them about it, and then they go on. Or is that effective?
So look, and all of this is just my opinion. Like, I wasn't a judge in this hackathon, by the way, so I was just sort of chairing it and sitting back and taking in the pitches. If you ask the judges, they might have a different read on it. Like I'm looking at, and that sort of idea that different students proposed in different ways of, it's a defense or a little mini exam after a continuous assessment component or an interview, all these different things. I look at it and go, yeah, definitely a step in the right direction. Maybe I wonder a little, does that really stamp out the cheating? Or, how many module coordinators would be kind of looking and saying, there's a fabulous lab report, but then, the student kind of flubbed some of the questions. Like, would you really go, okay, I'm failing you? I just wonder if, how robust is a defense really? If a student is sort of looking at whatever text or whatever they got from ChatGPT, can you kind of look at it and bluff your way through? I don't think it completely sorts the thing,
but might there be a way to use it as a critical tool? Like, I could imagine in design-based disciplines, like you could ask the students to work with it and then to critique it, as opposed to kind of trying to get them to exclude it completely, given that they'll be using it in the working world when they graduate.
So that probably, that probably is a nice case where you kind of could do something like that. That the the assignment would be engage with the tool and write a critique of what it gives. But I'm still just sort of putting the asterisk that says, like, ChatGPT could play both roles, right? It could critique itself. You know, that's what I mean, is that you're always kind of chasing your tail, thinking, oh, but, you know, okay, ChatGPT will do this, but then the students will have to do that. But you're like, no, like this ChatGPT can write the critique as well, you know? So, but sure, look,
can I play devil's advocate for a second, Paul?
Sure.
So I'm putting the black hat on, you know, De Bono's black hat, I think, is devil's advocate, isn't it? Okay, you kind of said this is cheating. I would maybe disagree with that. Okay, I think we've now got a new tool that is out the box. It's not going back in the box. It's here, just like the calculator is here. Yeah, and the calculator was cheating when it first came out, because I remember, you know, using slide rules, and we weren't allowed to use calculators and things. I think our role now is not to think ChatGPT and use of ChatGPT is cheating. It's ChatGPT's out there. How do we teach our students to utilize this tool, which they are going to have access to, and is only going to get better, and is only going to get more embedded into all the tools that we use? Yeah. It's not going to be cheating, because it's just going to be the norm. It's one of our tools to access and produce information. Now, we've got to change our assessment strategies to absorb that new reality. And yes, some of that is going to be, I mean, as I do, you know, in the business school, I mean, project-based assessment now isn't the summative assessment that it used to be even a couple of years ago. It's present your work, yeah, whether you're on Zoom or whether you're in the classroom, right? Let's see a group presentation of 20 minutes. Yeah, and that talks to communication skills, and that talks to, you know, that kind of stuff. So the learning outcomes aren't just the technical knowledge of writing a bit of code or, you know, creating a formula or whatever it is, but then you've got to be able to talk to that in person, rather than, you know, second degree written, you know, drawing, whatever. And I think we're going to have to move to that. I think. Yeah,
look, Joe, I mean, I'm not, look, yeah, in some ways I'm saying, I'm using strong words, because
that was, yeah,
the brief I gave to the students was, let's be honest. But no, I stand over, like, I'm an AI optimist, okay, right? So, like, I'm not saying I want to uninvent AI, God no, but I'm just saying the status quo right now, and let's say in the humanities, gives it much clearer, right? If I was to enroll for a BA in English and history, you know, which that's probably one of the most popular courses the university offers, right? And if I go through that BA, you know, a huge chunk of the assessments will be essays at home. Yeah. And we would all 100% accept that, you know, if I enroll in that BA and paid some third person, you know, who is not a student of UCD, and I just email them the assignments and they write the essay and I submit the essay, and then I'll get a BA in my name, like, we would all call that cheating. Like, there's no question that that's cheating. And you know, we can talk about, oh, we could make an assignment like this, or we could have this or that assessment strategy. But like right now, if you look across the university, loads of modules have like essays, which is the most clear-cut case. That now, and look, there must be loads of students doing this. Like, let's not be naive, right? Like, there was students already using Chegg. Yeah. So now it's like Chegg, but cheaper and better. Like, so how on earth would people not be using it? And it is cheating. And if too many people are getting degrees that they can't actually back up in the workforce, that is very problematic for the university. Or, right, I mean, the alternative option is to go a whole different conception of education and say, well, why do we bother assessing people? And why do we have exams? And, you know, why do we give out degrees? You know, you can have all those debates, right? But that isn't how the university is set up, right? The university is set up to say you earn a degree and then we give it to you in your name. And if you try and evade that, we call it cheating. And, you know, so I do just want to say that in a lot of cases, that's the clear, obvious first order effect of ChatGPT will be dishonesty. So, but leaving the door open to the nice stuff you mentioned, of course.
Can I jump in with a question? Paul, did any of the groups touch on this idea of accessibility or inclusiveness? Did any of them touch on the fact that, hang on, the timed end of trimester exam is not accessibility friendly?
They actually didn't talk much about timed end of semester exams at all, Jen, which sort of surprised me.
Interesting.
Because
okay.
I was setting up, I was setting up that brief of saying, come in and have an opinion and, get the thing right, which I would have thought a pretty obvious thing to do would be to kind of come and say, let's have more end of trimester exams. It's like the obvious thing. Like there was a point in history when the university pivoted away from exams.
Yeah, because you were mentioning that earlier, and like I don't know for sure when that started, and like you said, you suggest it might have been when modularization happened, but a big driver of that is this idea of inclusive education and inclusive assessment, because the timed end of trimester exam only suits a very small number of student types, if that makes sense. And these alternative forms of assessment, make a video, make a physical model, do a Viva, these alternative assessments are more inclusive of different student abilities and preferences. So I'm just interested, like, did you get the sense, or did anybody mention any kind of learning difficulty or neurodiversity or anything like that in the discussions? I know what you mean.
You kind of expect that young people would care about such things, but maybe it was mentioned, but no, it wasn't particularly the vibe.
Interesting.
It wasn't flagged up as being useful for that purpose. So
because I'd be so interested in, like, I don't know, the person with autism that will say, well, hang on a second, I don't want everyone going back to end of trimester exams. That's a disaster. Or any other kind of permutation. Okay, so that didn't come up.
That's something we should do something about with, I don't know, some kind of university-wide communication on accessibility, UDL, and kind of the implications of AI, Jen. I'd be happy to work with you on something like that.
That's interesting, actually, Joe, because I brought it up at a meeting recently that I have observed confusion across the board between UDL and accessibility.
Yeah,
and accessibility, I haven't found. Pardon?
Yeah, I've just released a book on exactly that.
Yeah, and I haven't found, let's say, an equivalent tool for accessibility. I've looked at the UDL ones, which are quite impressive, but accessibility is left there. And back to your point, Jen, I can't see somebody with some sort of accessibility issue being the one to put their hand up, especially in something like that.
I know. They're not going to be the person.
They'd want to be there in outnumbering the others. I'm with you all the way. So what we would have to do is phrase it and encourage it. And that's
like, I'd kind of nearly be interested to bring this hackathon idea to the community of students who use access and lifelong learning, and see what kind of thing, because they have a real vested interest in not ending up in the RDS exam hall again. And it would be really interesting to see what kind of ideas they taking this hackathon model and running with it again in other parts of the university.
Definitely.
Paul, have you copyrighted your idea, or are you disposed towards this approach?
More hackathons, the better.
No, because I mean, I had this conversation with Jen the other day, just saying, what Paul has done, I think it's a great idea. Maybe it's something we could look at in schools, but I think Jen's idea there now is taking it to another place that's really great. So you're okay for us to come back and we can consult with you as to what worked and what didn't?
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. We'll credit you.
But look, I mean, just to kind of summarize it, and maybe I repeat myself, but like I say, there was a debate about the idea of pivoting away from exams whenever that was 30 years ago. And there was reason to have that debate. People did say, it will make cheating easier, and indeed it did. And there certainly are people walking around that have BAs and MAs in the humanities that they wouldn't have got if they had to do final exams, right? So, like, we had this status quo bias, like, just because things are set up a certain way, we kind of accept it. And I'm kind of saying there's already downsides of continual assessment that we've all sort of agreed to just sort of tolerate. And I'm just putting it out there that I think if ChatGPT existed 30 or 40 years ago, and there was a debate, the university saying to itself, we move away from final exams. You know, if you could clearly see, well, as soon as you do that, ChatGPT comes into play. Probably that decision wouldn't have been made, right? So a decision was made at a point in time. It's created a status quo. We all have this perception that you have to have continued assessment, but I'm just saying, like, the situation has changed hugely, and you know, if there was some good arguments for not abandoning final exams 30 years ago, those arguments are now way stronger. So, like, to go back and revisit that debate, I think is very timely. But I don't know enough about the history. Maybe there wasn't a debate, but anyway, that's the summary of my thought at the moment. Anyway,
we've got David and some Mooney schist with their hands up.
Yeah, hi, and that's myself. Maybe if I could just jump in. Hi, everyone. My camera settings are all out of whack at the moment. So apologies. My name is Simon Mooney, so I'm here on behalf of myself and Finbar Brereton of the School of Planning and Environmental Policy. So I just have a few questions for you, Paul, if that's okay.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, so fantastic. So the first relates to existing AI detection services. There are a few. Maybe one of the most well-known ones is from Silicon Valley in the West Coast. Turnitin, it's an AI detection service. To my knowledge, individual licenses aren't available. I think university faculties or departments or whatever actually have to purchase it on behalf of staff. But have you explored the efficacy of any of these existing services at all? I'd just be interested to ask.
So like, within the project, no, right, we haven't done anything structured on that. Just my opinion, right, and the opinion of colleagues working on this, those detection services feel like, you know, you've got your finger in a jam. Like with things like custom instructions, like there was a period when you'd read text and it would have that kind of smell of ChatGPT off it, a kind of default house style. But once you start putting in custom instructions, you can pivot that around all sorts of different directions. So,
yeah,
you know, and even if you have an AI detection service that works right now, I can't see it working in 6 months. Like, it's only my intuition, but I just don't see them as being a sustainable answer.
And that's
for your information, Turnitin is either currently being or about to be piloted.
Yeah, but it does work.
But it doesn't touch what this issue is about.
No, there's been quite a bit of research done, particularly in the States, by some of the academic institutions. Ethan Mollick's done some work on this. Bickerstaff has done some work on this and whatever, and they've tried all the different major plagiarism detector kind of AI detector tools, and they're very, very low probability. There's also a huge amount of bias in the detection tools themselves. They bias against kind of people with English as a second language as well. So trying to implement online tools to detect whether ChatGPT has been used, for instance, is going to expose you to huge amounts of risk as an academic if you then fail somebody and they appeal. So my view, my recommendation would be to stay away from them at the moment, because you're on very shaky ground using that kind of tech.
Fair enough, yeah, and I'd also acknowledge that it's continually evolving. And I think until recently, I think ChatGPT's last knowledge update was 2021. That's no longer the case, I think, since September of this year, I believe. So yeah, just a second thing briefly to bring up. I don't know how useful this is, but attendant to this postdoc project I'm working on with Finn, and he actually asked me to run a few manual iterations on ChatGPT 3.5 and also Bing, which I'm pretty sure uses the ChatGPT 4 version. So I ran about 10 iterations of a 2,000 word assignment, and it was fairly interesting that we reached a saturation point relatively quickly in terms of the verbiage, in terms of the syntax. You almost get to thinking, if you're a student and you want to be particularly crafty, and then it becomes a question of how crafty is your average student, you could almost work backwards and maybe alter the syntax and verbiage to make it more rudimentary, but I found it quite interesting that you could identify certain trends and patterns relatively quickly. So I guess, yes, it does go back to a question of how crafty or is your average student, where they can almost kind of alter the language slightly or kind of inveigle their way into the AI and just get around these things. But I'm just curious if you've used it manually and fiddled around with it and noticed this, because if you have a question that, if you have a student that's pressed for time and wants to do this on the fly, I think they probably will be exposed.
Yeah, I mean, if the student won't pay for the €14 a month for the paid tier, you know, GPT 3.5 is underpowered. It's obsolete. It's old tech. The new stuff is way more powerful, and like 3.5,
Yeah.
you're right. It does have a sort of vibe about it. It will kind of repeat itself. You know, if you ask it the same question multiple times, you'll kind of keep getting similar answers. So it does reveal itself, but like the tech has already moved on, and the cutting edge stuff, GPT-4 with custom instructions, I just don't see that as being a problem. Like it's not hard to work around that now, you know.
And GPT is only one. I mean, you know, there's Claude, there's Bing, there's Hugging Face, there's multiple Llama 2, there's multiple chatbot options.
Yeah, and it right now it's the market leader, but like in a year's time, who knows, you know.
That's right. And I
what
mean,
are the limitations, Joe? Sorry, you told us the last day about getting in through Bing and Chrome to get into ChatGPT 4. I've been tipping away with it, but I am noticing limitations that I'm hearing people say, oh, you can do this, that, and the other, and I can't find the boxes. So are there limitations between that and the paid version that Paul is obviously using?
Paul's using ChatGPT. So you log into ChatGPT, OpenAI,
yeah.
GPT.
Yeah.
Now, Bing leverages ChatGPT 4. So
yeah.
it's kind of got a back-end connection into ChatGPT 4.
Yeah.
You don't get things like the plugins.
Okay.
The plugins, you don't get the custom instructions. Now, the custom instructions are set up on an account, so that if you've got a ChatGPT account, you can put in custom instructions. And I suspect then that ChatGPT 4 would still leverage your custom instructions, even if it was being accessed through Bing.
Because it can save instructions as well, can't it? You know, so it saves you an awful lot of time. But I can't find that feature in the free
Bing access. No. And again, if you use Perplexity, you get other options, you know, and you're still linking in back through to ChatGPT.
Yeah, but it's still, if people are on the fence, it's still a good way to go in and to get their. You know,
I still pay my subscription every month to ChatGPT.
And Claude.
And Claude and Perplexity, yeah.
Midjourney.
Then I'm doing a lot of these talks and demos and, you know, training and stuff. So I'm actually, I kind of find that having the full access to the current tools is well worthwhile. Yeah.
I mean, without sounding like a salesman, like I'm not in a commission, but like, you know, you can feel that sometimes, you know, we all have annoying tasks. I need to summarize something, or I need to brainstorm something, or you know, here's my biography, but I need to rework it for a funding app. You know, these sort of annoying text-based tasks that cost us time. You know, when you just have those moments of like, oh, like ChatGPT just got me back my morning. Like that could have been a really unpleasant 2-hour job, and instead it was a 10-minute job. You're like, if there was a person who offered to do it, you'd be like, oh, I got €20 in my pocket, do it, you know? And you're only paying whatever is €14 a month. I mean, I think for some people, and I'd say for probably most academics, you know, you could get hundreds of euro worth of value out of ChatGPT in a month, you know, and I'd say that the price will go up. Like I'm sure OpenAI know that they're underpricing for the value that they deliver. I'd say in a year or two, these tools will be gone up in price. It's kind of a golden moment. It's all new and fresh. They'll probably I've heard claims that they're losing money, right? Just the computational power, like when you're especially creating images, like that requires big, powerful computers and data centers that are hungry for electricity. You know, so it's almost like a lost leader at the moment. So yeah, if anyone's on the fence about, you know, paying a subscription for a month or two, like I would really urge you to think about it.
Yeah, try it and see, because it's a quantum leap in the quality that you get. Yeah.
David, do you have a question?
Yes, indeed. Thanks. I was intrigued, Paul, about the selection, or the way your sample of participants got selected. One of my thoughts was that the people who are already using ChatGPT had so much time on their hands that they were not busy in week 6. That could be a completely misunderstanding. I had a small involvement in setting an essay assignment for some final year thermodynamics people. I'm still doing a little bit of stuff. And for a long number of years, we'd asked them to, these are fourth year mechanical engineering students, and they'd never actually been asked to write an essay on a topic that they more or less chose themselves before. And I've been running this for about 10 years, whatever. But this year, the instruction was, well, look, use the chat GPT, of course. And by the way, if you cannot do better than that, why should an employer pay you? That's so you're yeah. So and basically we encourage them to use it for testing and just to see how good or bad or how they perceived it. But I know that's a transient thing. Anyway, you were talking about continuous assessment and how it evolved. I mean, I have to tell you, when Hugh Brady took over as president of UCD 2004 and Philip Nolan was registrar and so on, first of all, they hatched this plan to have the modularization, semesterization, and UCD Horizons, educational arrangement. That was all announced to the public before it was mentioned to the staff, right? That's how it worked. And because there was very little continuous assessment apart from lab reports, which were accepted as being fairly copied in engineering. I'd say there was almost no sort of engineering academics interested in experimenting with new teaching and learning and assessment methods. Basically, most of us were products of a system that we kind of kept perpetuating, and it was all based on final exams, and 13 final exams in 3 weeks at the end of third year, this kind of thing. So, but also a big 4-week gap in the trimester around Easter, where the real preparation, the project management for facing these 13 assessments was arranged and so on. Anyway, because of the Horizons thing, we had engineering had to go to the common timetable. And we would have had typically, 4 lectures a week in modules, and then the maximum became 3 and all the rest of it. And so between that and the Horizons, about 20% of the contact time was lost, out of engineering. So there was kind of a big trauma. None of it was driven by engineering staff, I can assure you. It was very much by diktat. That's how it worked. So there was no debate about moving to continuous assessment. We were instructed. So and then some of us laughed at the fact that we were basically told that the maximum weighting of a final assessment would be quite restricted, and you're supposed to have 3 or 4 items. And then the next complaint was we're over assessing, there's too many things to do. Well, what do you expect when you told us to do that? So anyway, sorry, that's my slightly cynical take on the way it all happened. So yeah, it's very labor intensive to do what you're suggesting, obviously, to go back to either personal conversations or the limitations of final exams. I mean, it occurs to me that when you ask a person come in for 2 or 3 hours to do a final exam in the RDS or whatever, there is no other circumstance in life where they would do that. I mean, even operating a pen is almost not done anymore. So it is a completely odd, I think, but it does have the integrity, as you point out. Anyway, that's my random mix of thoughts on the subject.
No, some great history, David. Good to hear, Good to hear.
Should we take a short break before moving over to you, Joe, do you think?
Yeah, and then I can just check that I can share my phone screen as well, because I connected earlier on and caused that awful noise. So while everybody's grabbing a coffee for 10 minutes or so, I'll just see whether I can share my phone screen, and I want to demonstrate something from the phone.
You want me to stay here with you?
If you like, yeah, just for a minute or two, that'd be great. So so
it's 5:02.
Yeah.
Is 5 past good?
Should be good.
5 past?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, see you all in 10 minutes, okay?
Okay. Now, let me see if I can share.
Okay, so we're recording again now. We've a few people, but we don't know if people will. I suppose if they stayed on, they'll come back. Yeah,
I think we lost James. Oh, James is back there.
James is coming back in 10 minutes, and Jen is gone, but she's going to catch up with the recording. So will we just go ahead?
Sure,
yeah, I'm back. James is back. Yep.
Great, excellent.
Well, I haven't got anything formal prepared, but I just wanted to bring you up to date with a few things that have gone on in the AI space since last we talked. What I was going to try and do was show you an update that happened to ChatGPT about 2 weeks ago, which now allows you to have a conversation with ChatGPT. And Paul mentioned this earlier on. So there's a verbal interaction option now. If I share my screen, I just took a couple of screenshots while we were waiting. So are you seeing that screenshot of my phone there?
Yes, that's good.
Right. So you can download the ChatGPT app. It's a free app. It's on Apple and Android, and you download it. And when you get into the app, you've got this interface. Okay, but as of a couple of weeks ago, there is this little headphones icon on your phone screen. This is only on the phone. Okay, this doesn't work on the computer yet, but it is on the phone. When you tap on that icon, so this little headphones icon in the bottom right there, rather than having to type your message in, your question in or your prompt in or whatever, you get this screen. Okay, and after a couple of seconds, it connects and it just prompts you to start speaking. And as you start speaking, that circle turns into this kind of bubble shape that moves, so you know that it's kind of listening to you. So you just ask it what you want, and then it comes back to you and just gives you, talks it. And you can also go into the settings in the ChatGPT app, and I think there's 4 different voices that you can ask it to use, and they sound pretty good. Yeah, and when you so the voice will talk back to you, and whatever custom instructions you've set up in your main ChatGPT account, it'll take account of all that stuff. So I have it. One of my custom instructions is always give me 3 follow-up questions that will take the conversation further on. Yeah. So at the end of the discussion, that comes from ChatGPT, she asked me three different questions, and if I wanted to further expand on one of those questions, I can just say, oh, further expand on point 1 and point 2 for me, and then she'll give me more on that. Yeah. So I mean, I when I dropped the kids from the school run this morning to school, I had to go around to 2 other schools and drop off the application forms for Danny to move from 6th class up into big school. So in the car, while I was sitting in the school traffic, I was structuring up a new seminar that I've got to deliver by just talking to ChatGPT and asking it for ideas and asking it to develop certain points a bit more for me and stuff like that. And as you do that, everything that ChatGPT speaks to you is also recorded in the chat, as a full transcript. So now I come back to my computer. So if I fire up ChatGPT now on the computer and I log in on my computer, because it's the same account, so my Joe Houghton Google account, there we are. Okay, so now in my chats history, over on the right, I should, once it's loaded, here we are. Right, so I was asking ChatGPT this morning, I want to give you to give me an outline structure for 3 3-hour sessions online to business people who know very little about artificial intelligence. So, it started to give me a session breakdown and stuff like that, session 1, session 2, session 3, and it read this all out to me in a very natural, conversational type voice. And then, I followed up with another question. So can you give me an outline of some of the main AI tools that small businesses can use? Of course. And so this changes the game, like Paul said, because you can just have a conversation. And students can have a conversation. So I've shared this kind of thing with my students in class now, and I've said, look, if I set you a task now, or if you're engaged in a bit of revision or a bit of theory, and the textbook isn't really getting you where you want to go or whatever, just have a conversation with ChatGPT now. And a lot of students are saying that, and Jen, it's a pity Jen's gone, because from an accessibility point of view, this is a game changer, because some people don't take stuff through reading as well as they do through listening. They process verbally differently to they process reading. So this is another way now of engaging with material, and it's just like having a conversation with a professor or with a an expert in whatever the field is. So you set ChatGPT up, you tell ChatGPT, give ChatGPT a role when you start talking to it, whether you're typing or whether you're talking. One of the things you should do is you should say to ChatGPT, I want you to act as though you are, the world's leading expert in landscape engineering. Okay. Yeah. And then it will draw on that appropriate corpus of knowledge and will respond appropriately. Yeah. So you tell ChatGPT to take a role, and you can also give it instructions and stuff like that. So Paul also mentioned these custom instructions, and he showed you a very short set of custom instructions. Yeah. I did one of my recent newsletters on custom instructions. And if I show you my custom instructions in ChatGPT, okay, so the first bit about you, so what do you want ChatGPT to know about you? And you've got, you've got a couple of hundred words there, okay? So you tell it about you, and you tell it about your different areas of interest and expertise and stuff like that. And then it will use that going forward, and it will refer to that in your conversations. But the big one is this one, is that how would you like ChatGPT to respond? And you've got 1,500 characters to play with. So that's a good set of characters. Yeah. In UK English, using a conversational style, cite sources and URLs, ensure all your responses are accessible, inclusive, and drawn from global examples. I want you to remain neutral on topics. Never mention that you're an AI. Yeah, it's a pain in the neck for me when ChatGPT keeps saying, well, I am an AI, and you shouldn't really believe everything I say, and all this kind of stuff. So you can kind of tell it to get rid of all that stuff. Yeah. Keep responses unique and free of repetition. Yeah. Always focus on the key points of my question. Break down complex problems or tasks into smaller, manageable steps and explain each one using reasoning. And I tell you what, since I've put in this set of requests, and I'm quite happy to share that, because you can take this and use it and do your own thing with it. So hold on, there's the newsletter link. And here's it's a bit long. Right, let me take half of this and then half of it. Okay, so I'll say down to say 9. Copy that, put it into the chat. So there's the first half of my custom instruction. And there's the second half. They're in the chat. So you could just copy those as text and paste them or whatever, and then adjust them. But that's changed the way ChatGPT talks and reacts with me quite dramatically. The prompts that the responses that I get back from ChatGPT are now way better than they were just as vanilla ChatGPT, and it doesn't sound the same. Yeah. Another thing you can do with ChatGPT, now you've got a limited amount of what they call tokens. The window of short-term memory for ChatGPT is about 3,000 or 4,000 words. Okay, so that's how many words it can hold in its kind of conversational memory. But you can load in, you can say, use this piece of my writing, and you can load in, 300 or 400 words of writing from a piece that you've written. Okay, and I want your responses to sound like this. And ChatGPT will emulate your writing style. Yeah. And it will sound like you're talking rather than ChatGPT is talking. And if you use one of the bigger language models like Claude, I mean, Claude has a 75,000 word window. So you can drop in 2 or 3 full papers, or, the good chunk of a book that you've written in your own words, for instance, and it will make a much better job going forward in that conversation then of writing in your style and responding in your style. Simon, you got your hand up. You're muted. Okay, well, maybe his hand's up.
Been there from earlier.
Yeah, all right, okay. So Paul,
sorry,
any amplification? Oh, Simon's back. Right, yeah.
Sorry about that, Joe. Yeah, hope I'm not interrupting too much. Just something occurred to me as you were talking. I hope it's not too rudimentary a question, but just based on some of the responses it was churning out, I'm just wondering, can one manually enter a command into ChatGPT such that it can actually alter its scraping algorithm and give you something that draws from a particular set of sources or databases? I'm just curious.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I'm writing the current version, you know, the next edition of my newsletter, and there's a little bit in from one of the AI experts in the US on doing exactly that. So Ethan Mollett was posting earlier on today about, you know, forcing ChatGPT to only access particular academic sources and cite from that subset of sources and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all about the complexity and the specificity of instructions that you give ChatGPT, what then it will respond with. So you can definitely do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul, any comeback or amplification on that? Because I was building on what you were saying there.
Well, just, yeah, amplification. I mean, it's funny, right? Because when you put up things like the image generation, that's kind of flashy, right? It's an attention getter.
Yeah.
So people kind of go, okay, that's cool. You go for text to image. Whereas talking about custom instructions, it doesn't sound as exciting.
No.
You know, it seems like a little incremental feature, but actually it does really change the whole vibe of using the tool. The fact that you can give it standing orders to shape it, say, I always want this type of response. So, you know, if you were doing a BA in English, you know, you'd have lots of stuff in there about, you know, this is the writing style I want, and I, you know, it needs to be this type of academic tone, and I'm in an Irish university, and cite these sorts of books, and you know, you put all that in, and it would do a great job of that. You know, it really does reflect these custom instructions. Like,
yeah, I've opened a Google Doc that I call custom instructions. Yeah, and for my different personas, I now have 2 paragraphs of, you know, so if I'm going to be Joe the risk management consultant, then I have a set of instructions that I pop in here. If I'm going to be Joe the project management professor, then I have a different set of instructions. So you can very much affect the style of the conversation and the responses by tweaking this. This is one of the most powerful kind of hidden features of ChatGPT at the moment.
And I mean, even like, you know, so yeah, we're in agreement on that, but I mean, also just the questions, I think with Simon's question, you know, once you're on ChatGPT 4 with the power that it has, even without the custom instructions, you just give it a prompt that says, I want you to reference mid-20th century cutting edge architectural magazines, like, and it will just do that. Like, it, you know, that is a solved problem. You know, just ask for what you want and you'll probably get it, you know. So you know, and then custom instructions just makes that a bit easier, you know.
Yeah, and ChatGPT 4 is, you know, it now has access to the web. So you see here, I've got 3.5 there, and then 4 because I'm a paid subscriber. Okay, so there's 4. So when you hover over that now, you have these 5 ways of interacting with ChatGPT 4. So if you want it to leverage stuff that's current and on the web, you need to go and tell it to browse with Bing. Okay, so that'll give you all the power of ChatGPT 4, but it'll also give you the internet. If you want to do advanced data analysis, then you can choose this. You can't choose more than one. It'll only operate in one mode at a time. So you just kind of have to choose which one. If you want to use plugins, you choose the plugins, and then you go and you can choose which plugins you want to use. Yeah. So it's got a link now to Canva, for instance. That came live about a month ago. So if you like using Canva to produce, you know, nice looking documents and templated documents and stuff like that, you can tell it to use Canva. Yeah. If you want it to generate diagrams, then you pick out one of the plugins that will help you generate diagrams. So let's say we want diagrams, yeah, and you know, we've got other stuff here. You can tell it to, you know, you can upload a PDF and then ask it to kind of interrogate and comment on that PDF and stuff like that. There's all kinds of stuff in here, and there's, you know, there's a couple of thousand plugins now. So almost whatever you want it to do, there's probably something that you can do. Video insights, you can give it the URL of a YouTube video, yeah, and it will allow you to interrogate that the transcript of the YouTube video and, you know, ask questions about it and stuff like that. There's loads of stuff. Legal Guru, I was doing some work with the court service last week on you know, the use of AI, because the judges use young lawyers to kind of do a lot of their research for them. And so I was showing them, you know, how to use AI for that. There are plugins now that are back-ended into legal databases. So, you know, you can use Legal Guru, for instance, and it will give you case law and it will give you legal precedent and stuff like that. So these amplify the use of ChatGPT, but these aren't available if you access ChatGPT Mairead through Bing. Yeah, so this is why you need kind of to pay ChatGPT the license, because getting to this kind of thing is currently only available in the ChatGPT 4 interface, not Bing.
I have heard about some of the features, and I did have a good try, but it didn't work.
Yeah. And the plugin store is, you know, that gets you into this plugin store. So, you know, if you want to do, you know, work with video, then you type that in, and there's all the different video, you know, plugins that there are, and there's lots, you know, there's loads of these. If you want to, you know, work with PDFs, then here we are. We've got lots of PDF accessibility. If we want, say, academic, let's see what academic gives us. Okay, right. So we've got Scholar Assist, search academic research papers from archive. Yeah, X papers is the same. That's giving you access to archive and research by vector. So these will focus in on academic sources rather than general sources. Yeah. So David.
I read somewhere a few months ago that some legal people had got embarrassed by, you know, yes, basically that something got invented and so on. So am I right in thinking that what you've just suggested now, that you can actually, you know, force it to look at legitimate sources only?
Yeah.
This could have incredible implications for the efficiency or otherwise of the legal system. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's going to revolutionize kind of, you know, research in a lot of different areas, because you will be able to force it. And what we're going to see very quickly, okay, is, so if I just bring my, yeah, where's my AI tools list here? There's things like Dante.ai. Now, where's that? That's chatbot creators, academic AI tools. I think it's under chatbot. Yeah, here we are, Dante.ai. So I don't know whether I've shown you Dante.ai yet. There's a number of these type of tools that are now coming out onto the market. And let's say as a department, what we want to do is we want to create an AI chatbot for our students to use, but we want to limit the data that it can access, you know, and respond based on to, I don't know, you know, the knowledge of engineering, or the knowledge of landscape design, or whatever it is. Yeah. So you can fire up, now you've got to pay, okay, because the free version only gives you 300,000 words or something. Okay. But if you pay them, you know, 50 quid a month or whatever, yeah, you can basically load up as many books and papers as you've got and create this little data set. And then Dante.ai's, you know, UCD engineering instance will allow students to interrogate just that data that you've set up and stuff like that. So the bespoke chat GPTs, if you like, are going to become 10 a penny soon. We're going to be able to, oh, that's the new Zoom thing. When you wave your hand, it puts balloons on the screen. Sorry about that. So we're going to be able to create our own chatbots. We can already create our own chatbots now. There's a did I show you Ludia last time? Can't remember whether I showed you this or not.
You showed us briefly, and I went in and had a look, and yeah. It's very interesting.
So, you know, this is Beth Stark and Jeremy Ruston who have created Ludia, which is a chatbot based on and trained on UDL. So Universal Design for Learning, linked to accessibility, but primarily UDL. And you can put in lesson plans, you can put in questions and assignments and stuff and ask it to give you advice on how do I make this more accessible? How do I make this more universally accessible and design friendly to, you know, students of any, you know, any persuasion? And it's
so Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here. If a university, say school, has their own chatbot and uploads what they see as legit information and a copious amount of information, and actually makes that the restriction of the assessment. So then that anything that, you know, if their students have actually selected or sourced any material from that and can reference it, which is easy to check, that is legit, and that nothing else is actually acceptable in the assessment.
And obviously, when you set up something like that in, say, Dante or you know, Poe in this case, or whatever, that data that you upload is just yours. It's not made available anywhere else. You know, it's like a ring-fence sandbox.
So you can have legit books and papers and journals, and you can have the whole library, the UCD library, in terms of your subject area, plus your own notes and everything that a student would need to actually answer your questions. And that anything else they reference just is not, in the current light of things, not actually legit for the assessment. I mean, that is a workaround, isn't it?
Yeah, this is coming. I mean, this is, you know, the basic tools are now available, and they're only going to get better and better, and they're only going to, you know, improve in terms of user interface and functionality and whatever. But I think this is going to be maybe one way of addressing some of Paul's, you know, concerns that he's been raising. I don't know. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that the custom stuff will be useful, and you can see for stuff like legal use cases and things. I mean, I sometimes wonder, you know, like in the early days of the internet, there was great ideas. Oh, we'll have walled gardens, you know, these sort of safe bits of the internet, you know, for kids or something. And there was proposals that were kind of similar to this, but in the end, people didn't want specialist search engines. They wanted Google, you know, in most cases, right? And I sometimes wonder, you know, why would you kind of go for a smaller or restricted chatbot when there's
But I mean, if you think about it, we've probably all been using Google Scholar for years.
Yeah.
And pointing our students at Google Scholar. And Google Scholar is simply a more narrow, academically focused version of Google, isn't it?
So yeah, I'm not, you know, I'd say there probably will be a few of these specialist tools that will emerge, but, you know, you could imagine it being similar to the search engine thing. Like, you know, there's, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 big incumbents that are general purpose tools, and then maybe a few here and there specialist things like Google Scholar. But look, who can predict the future, right? Predictive technology is hard, so.
But I mean, to some extent, the future is already here in that, in the States, the University of Maryland, George Mason University, have already done this, and they're marketing this now as a differentiator. You know, come to us. We've got our own chatbot, which has got the stuff you need in it, and, you know, we're at the cutting edge. So this is also going to become a kind of differentiator in terms of attracting students to, you know, university or whatever. What, you mean UCD engineering doesn't have any AI tools and stuff? Sure. No, I'll go to somewhere else, you know. Yeah, they're stuck in the old ways, you know, and stuff like that. So I think we've got to be on top of this. We've got to be thinking about this, because the students know about this stuff, and other universities are getting on this. And if we're left behind, then we're going to be left behind. Now that's being provocative, isn't it? Victoria, what do you think? You're a big grin on your face there.
I mean, what we're really looking at in architecture is design, you know, and so I'm trying to think about how this can be used. And I know one time I was on online looking at AI, and I saw this program which would do house plans and building plans. And what was quite interesting about it is that it was a little bit like what we would call parametric design. Alice, you're used to that. you know, you put in the parameters and then you would get a result, and then you would modify that to make it work. So it was a little bit more hands-on, kind of tricky to use. And but with this thing, you know, you would say put a plan in and it could just modify it according, oh, it must be a little bit narrower,
Yes.
or the client wants the, you know, the some part of it to be bigger to fulfill you know, a building regulation or something. You have to make certain parts bigger, so other parts would automatically kind of regenerate smaller, and then you could cascade this down. So it was very, very fast. It was just like kind of, you know, according to the parameters that you set, just like the parametric architecture, it was just morphing the plan.
Yeah. And the visual AIs are doing that now. You know, I mean, the guy who won the Sony World Photography Awards, Boris Edgleston, this year, he submitted an AI image. Now, it won this global award for photography, and then he declared that it was actually a photograph. But he had something like 600 iterations of custom instructions that he used to generate that final image, and then he took it into Photoshop and edited it some more. Yeah, so you know, I think AI is going to become a tool like any other, whether it's in design or whether it's in writing or whatever. But it won't necessarily just give you the final answer, will it? You'll then have to, like you do with a normal drawing, you'll do a first cut, and then you'll share it with people and get comments, and then you'll go back and do another one, and things will change and morph and stuff. It's just a super calculator now, isn't it? This stuff. Yeah, David's got his hand up again.
Sure. Yeah, no, I just I think Mairead was there yesterday as well, but the UCD Engineering Graduates Association had a panel discussion session yesterday evening on engineering ethics and the future of AI. And
Yeah.
one of the speakers mentioned that AI can generate a whole load of internet content that's nonsense, and that a huge amount of, if you like, false information can kind of grow itself.
Oh yeah.
And I was then wondering, like, would that not undermine an awful lot of this sort of, you know, searching for information, or, you know, if AI is hoovering up everything, including the rubbish, it's going to get very confused. So I presume what you've just described is a way of limiting where you're searching.
Yeah.
But it would require a fairly decent level of skill and insight and experience on behalf of the user to know that you have to do that in order to. So I think we're all approaching this from the perspective of people who've grown up the hard way. And so it is intriguing to know. I mean, one could possibly speculate the vast majority of amateur users, you know, students trying to cheat, will make a complete hash of it, actually, because they don't know what they're doing. I mean, what you've described even about iterating the drawing or the diagram there and so on, like, that's applying an awful lot of the final intellectual judgment of the experienced individual, but just getting there faster, I guess, you know, because
just using AI as a different tool. And I mean, certainly when I'm training effectively now my students in using AI, because I use AI every week with them in the classroom, and you know, I'm teaching them how to generate better prompts.
Yeah.
So it's almost Socratic dialogue, but not with a person, with the AI. So you treat the AI like another person, and you've got to learn to ask the right questions, and you've got to learn to follow up and explore and go down, you know, different kind of possibilities, and then come back and draw it all together again and stuff like that. So teaching students those skills is critical thinking, isn't it? And it's synthesis, and you know, all this stuff that we're doing. We're just doing it with in a slightly newer medium than we've done before.
You're hinting strongly, though, that formal modules that actually spend a lot of time, you know, developing this insight, like what you're doing with your students. I mean, are there instances of universities having how to use AI modules, and should UCD be doing so?
There are 2 or 3 modules out there now. In so far as I know, it's only the US universities have got modules up and running now on using AI. and on, you know, leveraging AI and stuff like this in different fields. Yeah, I've been reading about those in the last week or two. So
what schools in UCD would be deemed competent to offer such modules?
Exactly, yeah. And who, you know, because I mean, to some extent we're all kind of stumbling around in the dark. It's the land of the blind at the moment, isn't it? And kind of, are we one-eyed men, you know?
Well, I'm very conscious that this is an intriguing discussion and giving insight to a very, very small group of people, and there's an enormous cohort of academics busy with something else this morning who are not here, but it's going to catch up with every single one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you could have spent all week in an AI discussion of one kind or another, according to Mairead this week in UCD. There was a lot of stuff going on apparently. So yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think we're at the best one, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes,
Alice,
I'm promoting you all the time, Joe.
Yeah, the cogs are whirring, Alice. I can see you.
Yeah, no, what I've been doing while you've been talking, and like in the background, is I've been going back and forth on the free ChatGPT from the point of view of a second-year student, and this is in architecture. And just to remind you, like in APEP, we have design-based disciplines and text-based disciplines, research-based disciplines. Like we're kind of encompassing the whole lot. But what has been happening is that, like, the design-based disciplines are maybe a little less aware of it, apart from, say, maybe outliers like some of the people in landscape, thinking that it's not really affecting, it's more the image-based, the image generation. So I've been going back and forth doing a project proposal for a community centre, which is a brief I used to set when I was running a second-year studio, from the point of view of a second-year student and then a world expert who's coming in to review the work. Yeah. And it's been kind of getting sharpened and sharpened and sharpened, but I'm finding that I have to use words in a specific way, and in a way that we do, like that kind of, like we were talking about Socratic reasoning, when you're trying to tease out a design discussion with a student. Now, it's still very general, and I could spot this a mile away that this was AI generated text, but I've only been doing it for 20 minutes. So, but it's interesting how it started to now point me towards specific resources, like specific studies. Like I asked it at one point to only reference historic texts or texts of exploring historic buildings in the area that the project has cited that are available in the UCD library. And it kind of started bringing me to some specific things, you know. So it's kind of interesting, like it's not just the image-based, or so those design-based, like the principles seem to be kind of the same, that it's about reasoning it out and testing it. But I've also heard anecdotally that architecture graduates more recently are starting to get hired that have AI skills. And that's because if you're able to input intelligently like the text that will make you a kind of a good image, it's quicker than making a rendering of a proposed design. But I have a question to Joe and Paul, which might seem a little naive and maybe kind of the horse is bolted, but if you're uploading things like images, like PDFs to any of these AI companies, where does that go and who owns that data?
Yeah, don't upload anything that's confidential into ChatGPT.
Okay. Yeah.
OpenAI are very clear. Anything that comes up into ChatGPT is fair game, and they will use it. Okay.
Okay.
So that will become part of the corpus that ChatGPT uses. If you're more worried about that, Claude AI was started by two engineers who used to work for OpenAI, which is the ChatGPT company, and Claude AI has been set up as a kind of an ethical AI. And they don't open up. So if you upload stuff into Claude and say, interrogate this paper for me or whatever, they don't make that available to everybody else. I think that's the DPD man. I just need to go and give him a couple of parcels. So just Paul, pick up for me. All right.
Yeah, I'm afraid I have no insights actually on that data reuse stuff. I mean, what I would comment is there's already a number of class action lawsuits spinning up in the US about people like authors who feel that their books got included in the training data without their consent. So that's already one open legal question of, you know, was that lawful? Should royalties be paid? And again, it's kind of it's sort of ambiguous, you know, that idea of saying, okay, so let's say you did upload a PDF and that became part of the training data. You know, what exactly does that mean, or how worrying is that, or does that count as disclosure of confidential information? Like, I don't have any clear picture of that in my head just yet, you know.
I mean, one use from an academic perspective and I'm doing this with Claude at times now, is if you get let's say you get a student assignment back, a written, you know, typed student assignment, yeah. If you take out the header, so it's anonymized, you could just paste in the student assignment, your rubric, and the brief for the assignment, and then say to Claude, right, you're a professor of project management, okay, give me a critical analysis of this piece, and, you know, highlight the strengths and the weaknesses and stuff like that. So basically you're asking it to grade the piece and kind of, you know, assess the piece. Yeah, it's incredible how good a job it does. It doesn't.
Yeah, I was about to say, Joe, like, those sort of tasks are perfectly fitted for things like ChatGPT. It loves tasks like that. Yeah. Like a clear remit, a kind of, you know, apply this rubric to that block of text. Yeah. It is dynamite at that. Like, absolutely. So, and I mean, and again, I mean, it's sort of outside the scope, but like, you know, in schools that might have, you know, PhD students or people like that are grading lots of essays. Yeah. Huge temptation for those people to use these types of tools, to take what is a long, tedious task and automate it. It means more of an opportunity is now there, you know.
But I mean, the smart student will now do that before they submit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they've got the brief, they've got the rubric, yeah, and they've got their assignment. And I mean, you know, if I was a student, that's what I'd do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm asking ChatGPT to act as my professor and highlight where my paper is weak and where it's strong. And
yeah, I'd go in, I'd take stuff out of the module descriptor. I'd go to that, whoever the module coordinator is, I'd go to their profile and paste all of that in, and give all that material. And then ChatGPT would do a great job of play acting that role and grading the essay. Like, yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, that's there today. This stuff, yeah. Is that making everybody scream and run from the room now? All right.
I think the most dangerous thing is that feedback loop of people just entering bad stuff and then it getting, you know, used as data or, you know, quotes or, you know, reliable information for somebody else's, and then it just becomes worse and worse. You know, it's like the kind of algorithms that have bias built in, and that bias just increases and increases over time.
And I don't know.
It's like Wikipedia got unreliable after a while.
And that is where I think the sandbox, you know, the Dante type scenario, where we upload a validated set of data and point our students at that set and say, use this. I think that has huge potential in an academic setting going forward. And that's something, I mean, I know there's some funding coming up for teaching partners at the moment. There's an open call at the moment for teaching partners to kind of, you know, propose some research, and I'm going to put in a proposal to do something like that this year, you know, because it wouldn't take a lot of funding money to do, and I think it would be a really interesting thing to investigate and see whether it, you know, gave different results or better results or whatever. So so there we go. So if anybody's interested in coming in on that one, let me know.
Can I ask a little bit about Claude? Last time I tried to access it, I noticed it wasn't available in Ireland. You have to
you have to. It's US and Europe at the moment, but they opened up to another 78 countries week before last, but it's still not kind of available unless you were using a VPN. So if you've got a VPN, just connect to, you know, a site in the UK or the US, and then you have unfettered access to Claude.
Somebody explained to me that its specialty was in taking in a big document and giving you a very effective summary. I mean,
that's one of the things that it can do, David. ChatGPT has this window of 3,000 or 4,000 words. Okay, that's its short-term memory that it can kind of, you know, have a go. Claude has 75,000.
Okay.
So it's like it's a, you know, an order of magnitude different.
I spent quite a lot of time over the last several months producing a kind of 100-page report on hydrogen in Ireland or whatever on behalf of the Irish Academy of Engineering, and it needed a summary and conclusions. I was tired by then. So one of my co-conspirators on this thing, you know, basically plugged it into Claude and said, well, give me a 2,000-word summary. And it was a remarkably good start, I have to say. But having said that, I thought it was really good, but then I gave the report to somebody else, an engineer of 40 years experience, and he started again, and he did a better job actually. But
it kind of got you 60% of the way there.
Then
you put your domain knowledge to use and whatever, and you flesh it out and do it, you know, full justice.
But it occurs to me that in a lot of science and engineering type disciplines, that a very sort of regular thing for students to want to be asked, or to be asked to do, is, you know, take this comprehensive document and give me a summary. And so if that's suddenly the press of a button now, a lot changes.
It does. No, the game is changing.
But I think the problem though is if you're 60% there and you've got something that then you want to edit to make better, you know, and you don't know how you got there. You don't know how you got to that 60%. Because I think for engineering, for design, you know, you're basically building that, you know, building in your mind, or, you know, you're designing something in your mind, and you know, kind of having it, you know, provided for you. You need to reverse engineer it to really understand, you know, to be able to check it.
So what I was doing was using it to summarize my own report.
Oh, sure. Well, you knew where you were coming from.
I guess,
the student might, you know, be generating something without that. So there is that worry, you know, that you take something at face value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that comes back to then you've almost got to do personal demonstration in real time. And, you know, because that's almost the only way now of absolutely differentiating the students who really know what they're doing from the ones that don't. Because even saying show your workings, well, you just ask Claude to show the workings, you know, and it'll just give you the build-up of the workings and stuff like that. So so that's not even a differentiator anymore. There's no easy answers. It was fascinating, that research, Paul, you know, from the hackathon, you know, that it didn't generate any answers. There wasn't any kind of that's what we missed.
Conversation starters, beginnings of ideas. But no, like, and I mean, look, we're probably getting to the end of our time, so if I could give my sort of philosophical piece, right? The whole point of universities is like that we believe that let's say the humanities, that equipping graduates, that to make them well read and give them lots of knowledge of history and to give them an ability to synthesize that in written form. Like that's been the argument for universities for a long time. We think it's socially useful to be able to synthesize wide sources of information in a written form, right? And it is socially useful and good. And now we can do that at scale. Like, so, you know, in a sense, like ChatGPT is like an army of graduates. Like that can do all the good things that we said we needed graduates for, right? So it's not something that can be dismissed. Like the same way, like we pay for librarians because we think curating information is good and useful, and surfacing insights from obscure sources is good and useful. And, you know, then Google came and it was, for certain tasks, even better at that. And now large language models are clearly in that lineage and are clearly very, very, very good at it. And that's kind of said, like, it makes no sense to pay for libraries and then be totally against new tools like this. You know, they just sort of do the same thing but better. I mean, like I say, I've all that skepticism about cheating, right? But that's the balance of it, right? That these are powerful and good and useful tools, and we can't criticize them without sort of criticizing ourselves, you know?
Yeah, it's a game changer. You know, it's a step change, and it is going to disrupt, and we are right in the middle of it. So it's a fascinating. What is it the Chinese say? May you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
But is there the beginning of an existential threat to the future of universities then?
I think there is. I think in 10 years' time, a lot of standard universities are probably going to not look like they do today. And I think we're already seeing the growth of some online kind of effectively AI powered teaching institutions. I mean, Google released a set of courses online recently that you can take, and they've had hundreds of thousands of people take these courses, and they're effectively a professional qualification now. Yeah, nobody's gone near any bricks and mortar university, and they've got this qualification, and employers are now taking this and saying, yeah, you know, you've done the Google project management course. I'll take that as, you know, the basics of project management. Where does that leave my master's program? You know,
I think particularly in the US, the whole business of the magnitude of student debt that people are ending up with when they graduate. And I mean, I gather, even if you go bankrupt, you can't get away from this, you know, so it's a millstone that's getting too big now. And I think universities have exploited it. I mean, my take on it is that research has been funded by student tuition fees, which are way overinflated, and that party might end. Yeah,
something's going to break. Simon, you got your hand up still, or is that?
Yes, sorry. I just I know we're kind of maybe in the process of wrapping up, but just kind of something that occurred to me as Joe, you were mentioning that it's kind of inexorable, perhaps, that we're just going to have to move more towards in-person, interpersonal assignments and things like that. And I just kind of cast my mind back to something that Jennifer said, that if a student is autistic or agoraphobic or whatever the case may be, it opens up a whole can of worms as far as things such as mental health. So I'm just wondering, you think, okay, what is the solution here? Do we try to embed assignments into existing tutorials or something like that? I'm just wondering, are there any existing discussions around this? Because you're just looking at potentially libel and lawsuits if something isn't disclosed about a pre-existing condition or something like that. So I'm just wondering, are there any existing discussions around this to kind of try and nip these issues in the bud? Because it just kind of popped in my head.
All the UDL stuff addresses, you know, and takes you into this. So this is where the Venn diagram of UDL and kind of accessibility merges, if you like. The multiple means of expression, multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, giving students choice, not requiring them to sit a 2-hour exam, but maybe, you know, saying, right, okay, you can produce a video, or you can produce a written piece of work, or you can produce a podcast or something like that. Now, it makes it more difficult for you, the professor, because now you've got to grade 5 different types of work submitted by different people and all the rest of it. But there are ways of coming up with a rubric that will cover, you know, multiple means of representation from the students in different ways. So there's a lot of work being done in the UDL accessibility space around that at the moment. And you know, as I say, I've just written a book on that. So not a very good book probably, but it certainly highlights some of that stuff.
I wonder, is the UDL digital badge starting to cover AI now, Joe? Do you know?
I don't think this iteration is, but it will do. I mean, because I know that Dara and the guys at Ahead are kind of investigating this stuff at the moment.
Simon, have you done that digital badge in Universal Design for Learning?
I have not. I've only just started doing a series of formal lectures. So it's definitely something I'd like to explore. I was talking to Finbar Brereton, who's my boss at present, and he said that apparently you can't actually do a course in teaching or lecturing until you've actually given a few lectures, somewhat paradoxically. But I'd be very interested to explore that. If
well,
because they run. I think it could be a really interesting idea to do it from the point of view of trying to test out AI and kind of understand, like trying to understand how those parameters about, you know, people, if you're trying to deal with in-person assessments, what does that do then for everybody else? Like they run twice a year, like starting in January, starting in September. So like, if you want to get in touch with me, Simon, I can try and arrange that you can take it like next year, like starting in January. Because I think it would be really useful to do that if you're interested. Anyway, sorry, Tim.
Thanks so much. Absolutely, no, I'd be very much interested. I can drop you an email after this meeting. Thank you very much.
Really good course, that digital badge. I did it 3 years ago and I've facilitated on it as well. So that's your entry into UDL. And then if you really get into it, IT Sligo have now got a postgrad diploma in UDL as well, that started this year. So that's worth a look at as well. Yeah,
appreciate it.
Cool.
So have we one last question? We're running tight on time now. Is there any last question, or will we leave it here?
It's been a fascinating morning.
It's very informative. Thanks, Joe and Paul. Really good stuff. And I hope we can continue maybe with another one.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, so
Excellent. So thanks everybody else that attended, and I'll download the video and circulate it. But the EdTech resources folder is where you'll find it, the AI folder within it. But I'll get a mail sent out, or a target mail sent out across the college for those that missed as well. Okay. So thanks everybody else for joining us, and we will hopefully see you at the next one.
See you next time. Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks very much indeed. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks everyone. That was great.